Hello, and welcome to Season 7 of the FODcast, the podcast focused on the future of digital commerce hosted by Simply Commerce. Season 7 promises to continue to bring you some of the industry's brightest minds across the globe as we unpick the sector and where it's heading. From war stories to strategy and technology deep dives to future trends, we cover it all as we continue our journey to have one of the most popular podcasts in commerce. Before we start, if you enjoy our content, please do hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on, like and share on socials. Hello, and welcome back to the FODcast, the future of all things digital commerce. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Rhea Fox as we break down how the best brands are evolving digitally. Welcome, Rhea.
Hey James, how's it going?
All good, thank you. It's great to have you here today. Looking forward to
Oh,
this one.
likewise. Thanks for the invitation.
So, for those that don't know, Rhea's recently joined Moonpig Group as Marketing Director of Experiences. Before this, she's had spells at Ted Baker, Monsoon Accessorize, and Paper Chase, to name a few. Rhea's certainly well versed in retail, and I'm looking forward to unpicking her knowledge on today's show. Before we start, though, Rhea, do you want to give the audience a little bit more about your career to date?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I have got a really unusual career story. I spent 15 years in insight on a mix of kind of integrated agency and client side roles, culminating in my time at eBay, where I was European Insight Director. And that's really where I started pivoting into broader marketing and trading roles. So for the last sort of 7 or 8 years, I've been doing marketing director or digital director, P&L owner roles. I really like doing the two. So yeah, really that mix for me of both the marketing side, hands-on across all the channels, and then broader kind of digi director roles.
I love it when you start off saying my background's been really interesting.
It weirds a lot of people out, right? Because it's not usual, and I think that's a real blessing. Like, I definitely consider myself to be a Swiss Army knife in terms of the digital disciplines, but it's not for everyone.
No, it's not, but I think you bring a unique insight to the table, right? When you have that broad and varied background, I think a lot of people go through a specific career path, and I mean that's great as well, right? But when you've got a slightly different and a broader background and skill set, it's unique.
It is unique, and actually, I mean, my personal view, and I would say this, wouldn't I, is when you've got super high performers in your team who are, because we're all T-shaped to some extent, right? We've all got a spike, but it's really necessary to make sure that where you've got people who really want to do digi director roles or econ P&L roles or even marketing director roles, in the future, you've got to get them out of those deep kind of specialisms because sooner or later you're going to have to use a much broader toolkit. So the sooner the better, really, in terms of building breadth.
Nice. Well, like I said, I'm looking forward to unpicking your knowledge here. I'm sure there's going to be loads of insights that we can share. Let's jump straight in and let's start with the biggest shift that you've seen in how brands go to market digitally over the last 5 years.
I think for me, the last 5 years has been really a distribution story, and kind of the proliferation, really, of channels available to you from a distribution. So I think about the old world of commerce. First there were shops, and then there was sites, and then there was Omni, and now there's marketplaces. And actually, with that's kind of moved to marketplaces, not just the pure marketplaces like Amazon and eBay and Temu, but also kind of what I consider to be, marketplaces in their own rights, which have got their own real gravitational pull. So, John Lewis partnership next, enormously compelling businesses growing their overall sales and customer base through acquiring new partners, either on a pure partnership basis or wholesale basis. So really kind of going great guns. And I think with that has grown an enormous amount of opportunity for brands, but also masses of complexity, right? Because suddenly you're not just managing your store's P&L and your site P&L and your Omni P&L. You're also then thinking about, actually, how do I make my stock and my margins work, and my distribution and my people and my marketing spend work when I've suddenly got all these other channels that also really need managing and feeding. So I think that's been the really interesting one for me. I find it really fascinating, and both that distribution side, if it's not managed well, can become a real headache. And actually a real drag on kind of stock management and profit and all that kind of good stuff as well. So yeah, distribution I think is really key. And of course with that comes TikTok shop. So again, you know, the media channels themselves, or used to be media channels, now becoming, you know, increasingly shoppable. And potentially, you know, your frenemy in terms of both your route to market, but also your place where you're generating kind of eyeballs. So yeah, just absolutely fascinating. Distribution is the big one, I think, for me.
Yeah, so if you look at marketplaces in particular, you make a good point there. It's not just a traditional marketplace like you might first assume, like eBay as an example. And we've seen a lot of established retailers build marketplaces like John Lewis and Next, as you just mentioned. Um, if we talk about that in a little bit more detail, what, in your opinion, what brands do you think should go down that marketplace route? I guess at what point would a brand be would qualify in terms of criteria to say, actually, Joe, let's create a marketplace off the back of our platform, because it's not for everybody.
It's really not, and a lot of brands have tried to do it. You know, Monsoon, actually, where I worked, has its own small but thriving marketplace of kind of partnership brands. And actually, in that instance, is a really good example. I was at Monsoon Accessorize, interim covering sick leave as digital director, and the marketplace there is a really great example of a brilliant marketplace in that it offers the Monsoon customer something really curated, really tightly curated brands that will appeal to that shopper. You know, it's small, but it's additive. It has a defined purpose. You know, it's there to drive engagement and, of course, sales from the base. But I think that sort of micro marketplace is also really fascinating, you know, because in that instance, when you're building a marketplace of partnership brands, I mean, Reese is another example, actually. Whilst they're not a marketplace, you know, they've grown their adjacent partners list enormously. So, you know, Page Jeans and some of the cooler sunglasses brands. So those brands are kind of there to enhance the overall appeal of the, you know, the parent brand. So I think when it's done well at that kind of small scale, it can be enormously compelling and give customers a reason to go. You know, I'm a mad Reese shopper myself, but that additional offering that they have there, while it's not pure marketplace, you know, gives me a reason to go look at Reese.com for the curation and the new product, rather than go straight to John Lewis for my Reese stuff, you know. So I think that can work really well. So I think when a brand is doing it to kind of drive the customer experience and drive eyeballs and drive interest and give itself new things to talk about in a really authentic way, that's a really great way to use the marketplace functionality. Yeah.
Okay, I'm really interested in probing a bit more around, say, Next as an example, then, because Next is like widely considered as a very successful retail brand, as a very successful and efficient e-commerce offering. They obviously decided to go down the marketplace route a few years ago now, which is also, to my thinking, very successful. However, if I'm looking at it from my personal perspective, I see it as a big clash. All of the majority of the brands that Next sells on its marketplace is in direct competition to its own clothing and accessories. So slightly different to what you've just mentioned there with Reese, where it's there to enhance Reese with the sunglasses or what have you. So I guess what's your, as someone that's far more knowledgeable in this space than I am, what's your sort of thoughts around that, and maybe why they went down that route?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm a Next shareholder. I think it's an amazingly well-run business, and, you know, and the results speak for themselves. And actually, when you're a nerd and you spend too much time in retail digging around in annual reports and things, you know, it's really clear that when you look at their growth, you know, most of it is being, or a lot of it is being, really powered by these third-party brands, this marketplace. And so I guess a lot of people, particularly when they probably don't do as much shopping as me, will go, oh, Next, like I never go there because I don't like that brand, or it's not for me. I only started shopping on Next again a couple of years ago because of the partnership brands. And I suddenly realized that actually, if I wanted a department store online, it didn't have to be John Lewis, it could be Next. And so now Next is, you know, it's gone from being a brand that I probably didn't shop in 15 years to something that's I'm probably using once a month, or at least once every couple of months, for a kind of a big basket of stuff and brands. And actually, as a result, it's done entirely what these things do when the flywheel's working, which is now I've started considering and buying the odd Next product, which I never would have done before. So I think they're growing their footprint and their overall kind of appeal and ability to appeal above and beyond kind of the Next brand. But the other thing that they're doing is I kind of think of this as like a snowball effect. Once you've sort of built that center of gravity, you can bypass a lot of Google because you're not having to pay so much in terms of your acquisition cost. You've got increased repeat rate and customer lifetime value and app usage and all that good stuff. So, you are generating your own kind of gravitational pull. And now actually going to the next stage where they've got so much generational pull and eyeballs, they can then sell advertising space to the advertisers on their platform. So, I guess in the same way that Amazon overtook Google some years ago as a first shopping destination, my feeling is Next and, to some extent, John Lewis, through what they're doing and the scale they're building, M&S the same, right? That actually, if you can do it, and it is a monumental effort, B&Q are also trying, it has many rewards.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about it in that way, but actually, like you said, to get someone back into the website by selling Adidas, for example, it makes complete sense, and it actually opens up a whole new demographic of customer as well. So okay, interesting. I didn't realize you were a shareholder of Next as well then.
Oh, dabbling around. Bought some shares some time ago because it just phenomenal business. Just a really well run, brilliant business. There's a few bits I'd like to change on the UX if I was running it, but it's just great. And for someone that buys too much, if I'm buying All Saints and Reese, it's quite unusual now that I'll head to their sites first. It's going to be John Lewis or Next because it comes next day or it's free, or in the case of John Lewis, I can have scheduled delivery. So there's a whole heap of benefits that you get from shopping on those places. They're fearsome at returns. That actually means I'm kind of bypassing the original brands now.
Self-confessed shopaholic. Love
Yeah,
it.
it's
I
lovely.
love. It's great to hear about the passion behind a brand like Next as well. As I said, it's for long it's been considered one of the leading retail brands in the UK, and I think if I remember correctly, it had a bit of a blip a few years ago, but it's certainly come out the other side now, and again is widely considered as a leader. I shop in Next occasionally, and one thing I do really like about Next is how they promote all of their returns in store. Brings the customer back into store, and also the seamless approach it has. And I'll tell you now, Zara can definitely take a leaf out of their book, because I can go into Next and I can just do it all myself on a computer, put it in the box, and it's all done and dusted, rather than Zara having to queue in the local Reading one for about 45 minutes just to process their return. But hey, we're not talking about that right now. So but you also touched upon TikTok, and I think it's important to talk about that as well, because that is a channel that has grown monumentally in the last couple of years. I think it's safe to say now that for many brands, if you're not on TikTok, you are missing out on sales. I'd love to talk to you about how businesses can adopt TikTok into their kind of strategy, and maybe who's doing this really well in your opinion.
TikTok. So, I mean, look, it's super well established now. Do I think TikTok have nailed the investment case in the same way that some of the more established media partners have? Probably no. Can TikTok tell me with the same degree of accuracy, or some degree of accuracy in the same way that Meta can, the value of investing on their platform? No. Do I think every brand should be on TikTok? No. I think there's always a risk, isn't there? I call this kind of dad dancing syndrome, which is, uncool brands think that if they behave in the way that cool brands do, they'll get the same level of growth.
I absolutely love that. Sorry, dad dancing syndrome. Love it.
I mean, TikTok's a great and fantastic place to grow a brand that's going gangbusters with a youth audience. TikTok is a great place to reach newer audiences in places that your existing brand may not have reached them in some instances. And actually, you know, look, I'm a believer. So my brand's Red Less Days and Buy a Gift. We've experimented with TikTok. On the face of it, you look like it's doing nothing, but actually through the lens of our MMM, our econometric model, I really can see the incremental benefit of it. So I'm a believer, but not indiscriminately. And of course, you know, a pound's a pound. So you've got to have it's got to have a purpose and a place, TikTok. And it also has, you know, it's not without risk. My last role at TED, I ran a creative studio, and you know the norms of the creative that's needed to succeed on the different platforms is different, right? So this isn't just about taking the creative you've got and turning it into something that works for TikTok and something that works for Meta and something that works for YouTube. It really, there's a lot of kind of content curation and editing that needs people, time, money to get right. So I believe in TikTok, but you've got to be deliberate about it. It's not something you can tinker around with. And one of the risks for TikTok is, you know, if you're, for example, a big retailer and you sell brands, there's a big risk on there, because if you're doing TikTok Shop and you're promoting the brand, actually your M&S and you're promoting XYZ brand, really it's XYZ brand that stands out, really, you know. And there's a big risk that you're just sending sales into your branded product to the parent. So yeah, it just needs thinking about, and it needs dedicated leadership and thinking and creative resource, I would say.
Yeah, so I mean, arguably it might be better suited for D2C brands than retailers that sell other branded products, even if they sell their own products as well.
It can depend. I think it really just does depend. I think you've got to be deliberate about it. And I know we've all been there, you know, you get a call from someone on the C-suite to say, what are we doing about X new technology or channel? I've heard it's the best thing since sliced bread. And you just, again, it's just needs to be thought about and properly incorporated into the marketing and distribution plan.
I think that leads quite nicely on to the next question then, which is talking about sort of your channel strategy. And I guess it's very easy to just expand to say, look, we want to have our presence across all social media, across all the different channels. They've all got their place, and surely the more we have, the more revenue we're going to make. But actually, that's almost definitely not going to be the case. And you can either spread yourself too thin, or you can invest money in wrong areas and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure you've seen it all. So where do you think brands go wrong when expanding their channel strategy?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? And I think, you know, a lot of the language that we talk about in terms of experimentation in digital and in e-com is potentially a bit dated, right? So, you know, if you think 15 years ago, most digital media was pretty cheap. Experimentation, the marketplace isn't as crowded as it is now in terms of e-com. Experimentation was generally low risk and cheap, or more so than it is now. And actually, while some of it may still be low risk, it's not low cost. You know, we all know about the cost of digital media and digital media inflation, you know, really significant. We have to have these conversations all the time with our CFOs about actually why you can't get as much reach for the same amount of money as you spent, you know, last year, and it's 20% more. So, you know, this is, I guess, just how you manage things from a budget point of view. So it's not kind of not necessarily cheap to experiment in new channels. And sometimes one of the risks is you can sort of experiment at too shallow a level. So for example, you put too little into TikTok, you get no traction, and you kind of move on quickly. So you've not really given it, you know, enough depth. So I think for me, experimentation is obviously part of it, but I've spoken about this before. What really weirds me out is, you know, in a lot of retail businesses or digital e-com businesses, like your digital media budget is probably your single biggest cost line. Maybe it might be your operations center, but generally it's going to be your biggest cost line. Yeah. And in any other aspect of business, if somebody said, let's try and squeeze 5% of extra efficiency out of that 10 million, like anyone would bite your hand off. They'd be like, yeah, of course we would do that. Why wouldn't we try and get, 5% or 10% more out of our budget? And yet still a lot of businesses don't take marketing effectiveness and efficiency as seriously as they should do. I've seen over the last sort of 7 years, really MMM adoption has finally sort of reached the mainstream, but it's still not blanket. There's big retailers spending big budgets out there, and they still haven't got econometric modeling. So I hope it's coming, and I've seen like the discourse out in the market really change to really be about kind of effectiveness and incrementality, and kind of bringing the marketing and finance and digital disciplines really a lot closer together. But I think there's still a lot of room there. So to answer your point, I mean, I think being deliberate about experimentation, but getting really serious about marketing effectiveness as well is really key. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to is when the cost of some of these tools, and some of the tools that are out there look amazing, I have to say, as they start to come down and become more accessible, I think all of like the digital marketing community and ecom will just get more literate and better at buying media and squeezing efficiency out of the spend. The trouble is when you're moving at pace, we all know this, like the tendency is just to use your platform metrics and operate on last click and do all those things which actually really damage your brand in the long term. So yeah, more widespread adoption of kind of MMM would be my hope, I guess, for the industry.
It's a tough form of experimentation, isn't it? Because there's a very fine line between spending enough to experiment properly and spending too much in channels which aren't going to give you any return on investment. And then, how frequently should we do this? How, like, these channels vary in success levels all of the time. If it's failed, when should you retry that channel again, if ever? Like, there's so many questions that obviously come into that kind of experimentation part, which makes it tough. So I mean, certainly, please, it's not me making that call, because I feel like I would FOMO into all the different areas, because that's just who I am. And we must be missing X amount of thousands from this channel, and yeah, it's a tough gig.
It is a tough gig, but this is where, for me, it always starts with the customer. So we have two brands in our portfolio. In gift experiences, one, Buy a Gift, which is much younger, more family focused, and more potentially more value seeking, like a real fun loving group. And then we have an audience of kind of 50 to 60, ABC one, slightly more kind of more aspirant group, right? So there are two things, and actually when you know that, when you really know it as a business and you feel it, kind of everything just gets easier. The creative writes itself, the product roadmap writes itself. When new products come to the table, we can actually just really quickly say it's this one, or it's both. And it really helps with media as well. So I'm, always thinking about where to lean. And actually, when you think about that dynamic, well, I'm probably going to go more TikTok here, and potentially a bit more Reddit, or maybe some YouTube over here. So it just, I think if you really know your customer, it helps write the experimentation roadmap and stop that feeling that you kind of have to be everywhere with all of your brands. Because it's, to your point, you could end up trying loads of things, but it's not necessarily like relevant experimentation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here, but thinking of like the Red Letter brand and the Moonpig brand, I personally think TikTok could be a great channel, because you can really dial into that emotional connection of sending or receiving a present or an experience. And like, I feel like that's would be a great channel. I don't know how it does perform for you, but yeah, I think
really well.
potential.
Yeah, really well. And actually, we're bringing Buy a Gift Red Letter Days was acquired by Moonpig Group a couple of years ago. We've actually moving to co-branding now, so we'll be Buy a Gift by Moonpig, and that opens up a whole heap of opportunities. There's great synergy already between those two brands. There's a huge crossover in terms of the customer base, in terms of both Moonpig users using Buy a Gift and vice versa. So yeah, opens up enormous opportunities. And Moonpig Cards, the parent group, is extremely good at social media. So yeah, there's loads for us to learn in our division about how we kind of deepen that connection, but also kind of work together to help customers get more exposed.
Okay. But you said experimentation is probably the biggest area where you feel as though brands go wrong when it comes to their channel strategy. If you could give a business one tip around experimenting and ensuring they do it as well as possible, kind of what would it be, Rhea?
Just one tip. I mean, I guess I'll give two. Sorry, James, I'll cheat.
That's fine. The more the better.
I guess the first one is know why you're doing it based on your customer. So again, if you know your customer, that will help kind of frame the experimentation. And then the second one has always been for me around, to your point, around making sure you've got enough license to do it and do it well. Like, you've got to set expectation with your stakeholders. You've got to know what you're looking for, have a roadmap of have lead and lag indicators and outcomes, and really hold your feet to the fire about it, because sometimes it's too easy just to sack something off because your top line metric isn't moving. Well, we did this and we didn't see the sales, so it didn't do anything. But actually, really commit to it and wait 3 months. Your MMM may tell you something, or probably will, that that channel might have reached a completely new cohort of customers that you've never had before, or it's doing something else in terms of halo benefiting the other channels. So I think, yeah, if you're going to do it, and when you do it, you've just got to do it for a reason, and then commit to it and make sure that you're kind of measuring it through the lead and lag, what's gone green, what's not, what do we think's going to happen. That's always my approach to experimentation and new channels.
Yeah, and is there a, it's probably going to vary quite a lot based on the audience, the product, and all that kind of stuff. But is there like a time frame that you would say you would need to consider to make it a success, i.e. it needs to be running for at least 6 weeks or 3 months?
Oh, I think it really depends. And I think it depends on your, what's your longest period of strategic measurement or reflection, I would say. So let's say you do your MMM once every 6 months. You probably want to make sure that whatever experimentation you were doing was running long enough during that 6-month window that you can spot it. If you just run it for 4 weeks, well, within any given period in retail, one of those weeks is abnormal for some reason, because it's summer, or you had a hot heat wave, or you had an outage, or you're comping something weird the year before, or I don't know, it could be anything, right? So I always think you've got to have that decent period for normalization across a few different types of trading and commercial environments, haven't you, just to make sure you've got a decent read. So I do think it really depends. But equally, some stuff you launch it and it's just taken off immediately, and I think in that instance it's almost the opposite. You don't wait, you see it, and you push on. So I guess it's always about being flexible around this. And I suppose it's one of the good things about having kind of an interdisciplinary team with lots of different experiences. It's brilliant when you bring a team together and they've worked with lots of different retailers and different environments, because you can share knowledge about what's normal and what they've done in other businesses. I worked in a business that was really skeptical about SMS, but I was able to say, well, actually, in one of my roles, it was delivering a 10% sales uplift on an attributed basis. Okay, great. So then everyone's a bit more excited about SMS. So I think it's helpful as well just to have different opinions. One of the things I also like to do, there's an amazing community, or a couple of digital communities where we all kind of lean on each other to ask what's normal, what have we seen, what are our experiences for different sort of digital providers and marketing services providers. And that's, the community at large, I think is really helpful in terms of being able to set benchmarks around what's normal, what they've seen, ROAS, all that good stuff.
No, that's really cool as well. I like the fact that you've got that community that you can kind of sort of share knowledge with and brain dump ideas and that kind of stuff. I think it's certainly helpful both to experienced professionals, but also those that are building brands and completely new to this space. Arguably, that sort of information is invaluable. So that's really cool. I mean, I think it's fair to say then there is no clear time frame. It's a case of being flexible, take into consideration all the possible scenarios that can come through, and just make sure that you are running it for long enough to get a normal outcome. like you said, don't want to spike in weather that's going to increase the amount of sales of paddling pools, for example. That's
Yeah.
abnormal, right? So, um, all right. So let's talk a bit about owned channels versus paid channels. I mean, is there a right balance between the two?
So difficult now, isn't it, in terms of owned? Um, in terms of true organic owned channels beyond CRM, like, organic social is really hard to get traction now. And, most times, even if you do your viral post, you're giving it significant boost, right, in your paid, aren't you? That's sort of how you do it. So I do wonder if some of those holy grails of kind of owned organic social, those kind of days are perhaps gone. CRM and all the one-to-one channels, I think, is really kind of, it's my deep passion. Anyone can acquire a customer, but you really need to be able to monetize them through the life cycle, and that's just bread and butter. And I love it. I love CRM. We just introduced a new segmentation, segmenting our customers by a couple of different variables. It was dead easy. It wasn't kind of a difficult segmentation, and immediately we saw the result of doing it. And rolled it out to all our campaigns because it was super simple, category and engagement led segmentation, which is just working straight off the bat, which really is. If you're someone like me and you believes in kind of customer and insight and stuff, it's nice to be proven right and that these things still really matter. So yeah, I mean, I think more brands are starting, funnily enough, to take CRM a bit more and one-to-one a bit more seriously. We kind of came out of that, in my perception, kind of COVID period where everything digitally went nuts. Everybody got very excited, and it was all about kind of acquire at all costs. And actually, as kind of acquisition costs have gone up, customer confidence has gone down, I think more brands are starting to look more seriously again at their own base and loyalty and CX and CRM and all those good things, which is really positive and needed as well, because they're your customers, and of course they want to commercial with you more often. So I think there's definitely more of a focus on CRM. What's the right balance though between owned and I feel like the lines to some extent are blurring. So again, there's probably very little in the way of genuine organic content that goes viral unless it's been supported with paid media in social, unless it's had some cash put behind it. Likewise, I guess if you think about kind of first party data exploitation in terms of PPC and paid social, that just continues to grow, and it's really kind of a core component to buying media effectively in the paid channel. So again, the line is blurred there. That's your own first-party customer data that actually should be and can be and would be kind of massively improving the effectiveness of your performance media. So I don't know if there's an answer to kind of what the right balance is. The right balance is whatever gets you the most bang for buck from an effectiveness point of view. But I do think what will get you the most bang for buck is where paid and owned is fully in sync.
Okay, I guess it probably also depends massively on where the business is at current time, i.e., does it need to acquire new customers, or has it got X amount of customers that it can look to personally reach out to via one-to-one to increase sales and revenue, right? So I guess there's a big what if sort of question that overlooms that, but it's interesting to hear your thoughts on that. I've long said that businesses can do a lot more in terms of CRM and how they engage with their customers. Companies have been collecting data, our personal data, for so long now, yet we still get sent these crappy generic emails, and it's just like,
100%.
what, you know who I am, you know where I live, you know everything about me, but why can you not form that into some kind of personalized campaign? um and yeah, I mean, we all know that cost of living is high right now. In People are looking for good deals. Businesses know if a customer shops with them, and actually you should be able to now reach out to that business, to that person, sorry, as a customer of your brand, with one-to-one marketing to help bring them back into the funnel. I don't know why that's not that hasn't been happening properly for years now.
Yeah, I think the industry, I honestly think something was lost in that COVID period. I think a lot of brands took their eye off the ball on customers, forgot who their customers really were. You see it in the bellwether stats, right? You know, for a few years, the insight spend looked a bit crummy because I just don't think people were really investing because everyone just, I think a lot of the industry was just very focused on acquisition. So I'm hoping it turns back around. And it's an interesting one, I think, on some of those founder-led brands. You mentioned kind of where the brands are. You know, you see it, and I see it a lot. They reach a plateau, which is, you know, these brands have grown, really inspirational founders. They've got, you know, 10 million followers. They build a brand, be it beauty or sportswear or confectionery. And then suddenly the plateau is reached, and that founder has to then kind of reach very new audiences. The brand has reached a scale by which it's kind of almost outgrown its founder's ability to attract, you know, new audiences and grow. And you often see it, don't you, when they're kind of, these brands are bought by private equity, they have to do something really different to acquire customers or grow new categories to mine the new ones, because the original concept has clearly got legs, but it's kind of it needs a really different treatment from the founder speaking like super directly to their fans and buyers.
Yeah, so I guess that's a journey I'm starting to go on as well with the side group of Optimal Sports Group. So
Yes.
yes, it's certainly an area that I'm very interested in. So yeah, it's a tough one, I think, for brands to get right, because there's no one size fits all approach. You know what I mean? It's everything's unique to that business, to that customer base, and everything else. I certainly think if we're sort of looking at that kind of one-to-one marketing, the rise in technology over the over the last sort of 2 or 3 years in particular, but certainly over the last 5 years, has improved so much, and it enables businesses to do a lot more now than it could previously. So for me, there is no real excuse to not do it.
Yeah, and I guess it's I mean, I've talked about this a lot, but the term customer and personalization, I think if you're coming in like super cold, if you're a CFO or you're not like a very digitally savvy CEO, these sound like sort of soft concepts. They sound like things that, you know, where you're just sort of doing things to make customers happy. Like, you would only buy and invest in personalization solutions, and, you know, something amazing. Like, I was at the Emetria conference earlier in the year, like some of the stuff that they're doing with CRM and data, just like absolutely phenomenal, agentic stuff. And I think they could be seen as sort of soft, yeah, as I say, soft concepts. Like, why would you invest in this? And you have to be promoting, you know, the real-time hard commercial benefits of this, because we know they're there, right? But I think those types of things and tools perhaps need a bit more selling sometimes to sort of C-suites, because the benefits are like, they are absolutely there. I've seen them, I know it.
It's yeah, I guess it's not easy at the best of times trying to get an extra few 100,000 or a couple of million out of the CFO.
Yeah.
And when the times are tough like they have been over the last couple of years, I mean, it's even harder. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's coming on so fast, particularly agentic AI.
Yeah.
There are now a lot of genuine kind of use cases for retailers and other brands to use it.
Masses.
We couldn't go a whole podcast without talking about AI, could we? I mean, it's the hottest topic right now, and I know from previous conversations with yourself, there are a couple of areas that you feel there are genuine use cases for AI in retail. It's obviously spoken about widely and how it's going to change the world and what have you. We're not quite at that point yet, but yeah, where are you seeing AI deliver like real value in retail today?
Yeah, sure. So a few different areas. I think it's really interesting. I've really had to eat my hat on this, right? So a few years ago, about 3 years ago, I was on one of these podcasts and I was really not convinced about AI. Mainly because my experience has shown me that, you know, a lot of retailers, not just retailers, a lot of businesses, just full stop, B2C businesses in this country have got really crap data, right? Like, their first party and proprietary data is either shallow or badly warehoused or not in a great place, including, you know, some fairly significant size businesses. So So on that basis, I was kind of thought, well, open source stuff, then there's no competitive advantage, but actually brands are going to have to get their own data in order before they'll succeed. And actually, I'm really I've obviously changed my mind enormously. So where I see real-time benefits, SEO copy optimization at scale, massive SEO benefits from getting your copy right. I've implemented that in a couple of places. All forms of kind of copy optimization, including PPC, I think is going to be really huge. On the creative side, obviously image quality and creation, but I think what's the really interesting one, I can't remember which retailer it was, but I think it might be H&M. But someone recently has gone out with a whole campaign that uses AI-driven models. Now, having run a studio and seen how much work goes into the shoots and the styling, that is an absolute game changer. That time lag that you have between your product arriving into your, if in apparel, for example, your product comes off the boat to get to your studio, to get it pressed, ironed, on a model, photographed, and cleaned up and retouched and then launched on site. Like there's the long lag there between when that product arrives on your shelves and when you can sell it. So anything that can streamline that process means massive reduction in kind of time and effort, and just gets your product on your shelves quicker. So I think that is going to be an absolute game changer. I do worry for all the photographers and copywriters and models out there, candidly, because things are going to change very rapidly. But yeah, as a retailer, it excites me. And then I think over the longer term, we talked about this, but again, thinking back to my last role, sort of apparel wise, returns. So anything that reduces the impact of returns is like seismic. So in a lot of apparel businesses in this country, you're getting 40 to 50% of your stock back. It comes back to you. You have to pay for it to go out. You pay for it to come back. There's time when it's not in store and it's in someone's wardrobe or in the post office. You've got to steam it, clean it, make sure it's labeled, QA it, get it back on the shelf. So expensive, and the reason most people buy multiple items and return them is because the sizing's wrong. So when the day comes that we can scan a photo of ourselves or do a full body scan, know what size to buy and not have to do that return, I think is going to be an absolute game changer in terms of like profitability of the apparel sector, and potentially other channels too, home furnishings, etc. So yeah, I think that will be a real life use case that will really sort of transform, I think, the dynamics of the commercials really in the apparel sector in particular.
No, that's huge. Are the numbers really that high, 40 to 50%? Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew they were high, but
yeah, really bad, and worse actually in some markets. So say Germany, 50 is very normal.
wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and you firsthand, I can now see sort of the impact of the returns on the business. The cost of just the actual return itself is sky high, not to mention all of the other points you then mentioned around having to re-clean it, iron it, press it, whatever, then sell it at a discounted rate, maybe not sell it at all. It's huge. So
100%.
if we can get that down from 40 to 50% to 10 to 20% or potentially lower, then that'd be huge. I guess the question I have for you then is, obviously AI will make a big difference in that, because you can take a picture of body, figure, shape, size, etc., and upload it, and it can make the recommendation. But do we not have a big issue in retail with sizing itself, and the fact that the same business will have a large t-shirt, but it actually is different sizes? So, for example, I sit between a medium and a large, and I'm not always the same in the same brand. So I kind of have to buy both, because I don't know how that large is going to sit on me. And until I guess we get some kind of universal sizing, then the AI will help, but there's still going to be a discrepancy, right?
Yeah, you're probably right. And I don't know if there's an answer to that. I'd love some universal. I know everybody would, but it's funnily enough, one of the things that I think drives people to buy a multi-brand basket of stuff. So again, I really like Reese and All Saints. If I go to Reese, I have to buy two things if I want, them the same. And then one of them goes back because it's not the right size, and then I have to go to Reese, But if I bought a multi-branded baskets of goods, so if I bought my Reese and All Saints all at the same place on John Lewis, that's just one time for me to go to the post office. It's one set of stuff for me to package up. So from a customer effort point of view, it makes a lot more sense to kind of buy stuff in a big branded basket of goods where you just do one delivery, one return, rather than, single deliveries and returns from different brands.
Yeah, I love how you brought it back to the John Lewis marketplace type scenario as well. So it's almost like it was planned out.
I promise you it wasn't.
But so there's that. I do agree. I think the returns area is huge, and if retailers can not just get on top of that and bring that number down, that's massive in terms of the actual profitability they can make, and ultimately they might even bring the cost down on the product as well, which will only benefit customers, right? And I guess we spoke quickly about areas where AI can add real value. Is there like one specific area right now that stands out where you think it's just being like massively overhyped?
There are some real terrible campaigns out there. So I was on holiday in Spain in July. It wasn't actually retail, but it was a large international drinks producer, and we were at, like a bus stop, and there was a digital media bus screen, visual, and this photo had these two guys on it, and one of them had the weirdest hand you've ever seen. I don't know how, in the old days we'd have called it a Photoshop fail, but it must have just been an AI fail, and it was just you just realize, and we see it all the time, and you can laugh about it in some of the groups, right? But there's still a lot of things that look wrong and bad, even being created by some of the world's biggest brands. So I think there's going to be a whole heap of governance, actually, I think, that comes out of this, because in a world where anyone can create anything, including any of your teams can use the LLM's generative AI to make brand assets. Like, how do you control creative and quality when you're dealing with it at scale? I don't know. I think there's going to be a whole heap of governance that comes out of this.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It's certainly being adopted by businesses like thick and fast, and we're gonna see some catastrophes along the way for sure. Sounds like you've seen one already. Sure, we've seen those. I mean, take what you just said about content, and I've not seen the H&M advert if it is H&M, but to do something entirely using AI is pretty cool. If we start seeing more businesses doing that and it's not checked properly, then there will be some viral content going around, albeit for the wrong reasons probably, but there we go.
Yeah, and it's got like the opportunity to scale mistakes as well, right? So a couple of retailers recently, big ones, have been fined for using, or had their adverts banned for using unrealistically thin models. But let's say you then scale that's a mistake, and you make it once, and you scale that to everything because you've used AI as that's your start point was wrong. Suddenly, you've multiplied, you've had the opportunity to multiply your original mistake quite a lot and do a lot of damage.
Well, interestingly, I've got a podcast coming up with a chap who is very knowledgeable in the world of AI, and one of the bits we're going to be talking about is how businesses can influence AI. I kind of maybe looked at it a little bit naively, but ultimately, the more you feed it of a certain type of content, the more it believes that content is genuine. So actually, you can kind of influence people with false answers and false content.
Potentially very scary.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I'd never looked at it that way, because it came into conversation because I often just go on ChatGPT and just take what it says to me as true and fact. And he said to me, "Well, you shouldn't be doing that at all." But I think that would be an interesting conversation. So cool. Well, look, before we wrap things up, just a quick question for you then on what you think a successful D2C brand will do differently over the next 2 to 3 years to stand out.
Funnily enough, actually, we talked about it earlier, and I agree with you on Zara. Like, the customer experience is awful, and the UX is awful, which is a real shame, because all those kind of Inditex brands I really like, and I'd like to shop Massimo Dutti online, but I just can't deal with that website. Like, it's awful. But what I think that conglomerate does brilliantly well, Inditex, is it knows its customer inside out. It knows what they want. It runs lean. Like, you don't see Inditex like hiring thousands and thousands of people everywhere. Like, it's run a well-run, lean, retail-first retail business. It knows its places and where the brands exist. And actually, if you look at kind of New Look and River Island, sadly, and those sort of fast fashion brands in the UK, they are, they're dying, killed off by kind of the twin impacts of used and Temu and Shein. So actually, I think for Zara to be able to do what it's doing is incredible, because it's run lean, it's run well, it knows its customer, it maintains its brand, the product is good, the pricing is right. The website we could talk about, but they also do something. They've done something really well as well, which is sort of, they're over time, I feel like, reducing their reliance on apparel. So there's Zara Home, there's fragrance, so they're doing all the right things, and I think that is really what successful businesses will do: know their customer, run lean, adapt, and keep their brand like strong and healthy, and show them respect. It's proper retail basics, to be honest. And then I guess separately, the distribution is really key. So making sure that new distribution is really kind of incremental. It's either hoovering demand that you couldn't reach yourself, or it's creating new demand and being really deliberate about that.
The Zara website continues to come up in conversations as well. For some love it, I personally can't stand it. I'm the same as you. I don't understand how they have such a successful business
No,
with such a bad website, and the user experience, in my opinion, is awful. I don't think I've ever bought anything on the Zara website. Yeah, it's one of my favorite stores to go in and shop. But maybe it's deliberate. Maybe it's because they're
maybe
bad,
it's
people talk
deliberate to
about
get
it.
you into
Yeah.
a store. I have actually wondered if it's deliberately that bad because they want people in stores. So
But yeah, forever a talking point. But yeah, ultimately, then knowing your customer and being able to adapt when needed is going to be the key for D2C brands to success.
I think so.
Yeah, like you said, back to basics. But isn't that the basis of everything? Basics. We always try and overthink things, overcomplicate situations. Stick to the basics. Doing well, chances are you'll end up coming out all right.
I think so.
Lovely. Well, I think we'll wrap things up there. Thank you for joining me, Rhea. I loved it.
Thanks, James.
Um,
Bye.
Brilliant. So thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the conversation, please do subscribe to help us on our journey to be the #1 podcast within digital commerce. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.